Randall, I just told our audience that you're Chief Content Officer at Forbes. You came up with this whole idea of 30 under 30. But before we dive into that, I want to take a step back and just reflect on 2020. I mean, you're a citizen of New York, which was the epicenter of the pandemic just a few months back, and you're a journalist. How do you reflect on what happened in 2020, both as a citizen of the metropole, but also as a journalist?
Well, I think you in your introduction, you definitely hit on it. It's been a trying year, but I can't help, I'm a optimistic person, and I can't help but look back at what was a very challenging year, and especially for my city, and look at what came out of it and be optimistic for the future. And especially, congratulations to everybody who's joined this very exclusive club, because these are the people, you guys, the 30 under 30, the 30 under 30 listeners around the world are really creating. There's so much opportunity too. So it was terrible and continues, the numbers remain terrible, but yet we see the vaccines coming. We know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And what's happened though with entrepreneurship and with kind of people who are thinking that way is that so many things that you would think would have taken 5 or 10 years that we know eventually would have happened in 5 or 10 months. And so for a lot of, folks who are in this meeting, it's a great opportunity too. So it's been as a journalist and having spent a lot of the time talking to a lot of people across the year, at first trying to figure out how we can help and how we can try to come up with solutions. But in the second half of the year, a lot of it's just been a marvel at how, whether it's remote work from home, taking all the digital trends that everybody here, all the digital natives here know in their hearts, and being able to harness that and come up with affirmative solutions. I think people will look back on this time and see, just like, World War II was, one of the great tragedies of human history, but also so many innovations came out of it as well, where there's tragedy and it doesn't lessen the tragedy, but it forces humans to adapt, and there are dividends that come out of that. So I can't help, as the optimist in me, to look towards the future, see that the light is coming at the end of the tunnel, and kind of wrap ourselves in the progress that we've made.
I just mentioned we're on our fourth list. You guys obviously ahead of us, just celebrating a decade of 30 under 30. And you founded it, or you came up with it based on a premise that is now sort of obvious for everyone, but wasn't so much 10 years ago, is that technology for the first time allows young people an advantage. It used to be life experience, having paid your dues. Now there's these 20-somethings building these amazing, huge platforms. Walk us a bit through about the early days and how and when you realized that this very early list, actually, I mean, there's 40 under 40, there's 50 under 50, but we are betting early on why this might work.
It does work, and it works, like you said, Klaus, because it's authentic. I was a founder. I left. I was at Forbes as a writer out of college, and then I left after 5 or 6 years to start my own media company, and I wound up starting 2 media companies. And so I was an under 30 founder, so I do understand. And back, that was, whatever, 20 years ago, and it was unusual. Like, my partner was also in his mid-20s, and we were kind of like seen as these crazy kids. And so I'm very sensitive to that, because I think that new ideas, that this group here has an advantage. And then the list 10 years ago was, in part, it was the right list for the time, and it was smart in that we were going to create something that was going to be good for Forbes and good for the world, in terms of creating kind of a community of young entrepreneurs. But also the timing was so good, because 10 years ago you had the first digital natives, the first people who had never been in a world that did not have this. And that was unusual because instead of, just like you said, Klaus, instead of, yes, young and enthusiastic and nothing to lose, but now there was the advantage of being able to look at the world in a completely fresh way, in a digital first way, in a mobile first way, in a high-speed internet first way, that allowed all these incredible creations to happen to where there was an advantage. And now you saw 10 years ago, venture capitalists, 20 years ago when I was starting my companies, venture capitalists wouldn't give money to young founders. It was unusual when they did. 10 years ago, they might give money to young founders, but say you have to have an adult in the room. Your COO should have some gray hair, should be experienced. But then what's happened over the last decade is that, like you said, it's an advantage. The fresh thinking, the digital native, the ability to understand fundamentally how to disrupt every industry because you've never known any other way is an advantage. So everybody here has been, in part, everybody's lucky because you were all born in a time where your youth was an advantage. But of course, at the end of the day, it's execution. Everybody here is also so, talented. And again, so many people have self-nominated. The reporters, Klaus and his team, have looked for so many, also are looking for great names. So congratulations to everybody, because you really are, you've done exceptional things, all of you.
Now, it's in 10 years, it's gone from this sort of curious thing that Forbes came up to this global powerhouse, second only to the billionaires list, maybe, in terms of impact. We have 600 list makers in the US, we have 300 in Europe, 300 in Asia, and then these regional lists, we are doing 90 in the DACH region. Randall, how are we making sure, and maybe it's also a question I'm asking you, how are we making sure it stays exclusive, but it's still approachable, because it's a tricky balance.
Yeah, that is right. And listen, there's a lot of pressure here to make the list bigger. You have 90 there in the DACH region. We have 20, we have 20 categories here in the States. Listen, there was pressure to do 30 categories, 30 under 30 and 30 categories. There's a parallel to it. We didn't want to do it because the exclusivity, we felt like we had the right number where everybody was truly outstanding. And it's more important, and that's why, you guys could put, 150 on if you wanted, but it's that you have to find the right number where the 90th person is as outstanding as the first person. And then that's where the right place is. But what we've done as the brand has elevated, and every year, I know in the DACH region, more and more people are self-nominated, nominating people. I mean, so here in the States, certainly the 10th list, I mean, we know, and we're seeing almost everybody who's under 30 who's doing something great. We have 15,000 people self-nominate, and we have about 50 journalists working on this around the year to find all the great young minds. But then we have, just like you do there, I mean, there's a filter process. We have the funnel, we have the nominations, then we have semifinalists, then we have judges with the finalists. So, and then we have due diligence where we're looking for background to make sure, we check on ages, make sure nobody's lying about their age. If you do, we'll catch you.
Randall, I'm getting signals from my team that we have to wrap this quickly up. And I have one more question to you, to everyone who's listening. German-speaking region, people all around Europe who are trying to do great things and be, let's say, the best version of themselves. What's the piece of advice after 10 years of putting together this list you can give them on how they should deal with this honor, but also motivation? What would you give them?
That's a great last question, and the answer is what you're doing right now, which is it's the only community out there that all of you are going to be members of, where you really can all be allies, because you're not really because it's it's every different field, psychographically, the mindset is the same. Everybody here is ambitious. Everybody here is thinking like an entrepreneur and thinking about how to change things, but yet you don't compete with each other. So it's an alliance. So come to the live events, come to the virtual events, participate online, establish those relationships, but really embrace it around the world, where you have this incredible network. And don't try to sell people things or anything like that. Just embrace being part of the community, and you're going to see all sorts of amazing things happen.
Randall, thank you so much. All the best to New York. We hope it works out. And thank you.
Thank you. Congrats, everybody.